This is a tutorial on how to go from Creo Parametric into Makerware and then eventually to the 3D printer. So start off with, here's my soap dish that I created for tutorial 2, and it doesn't matter what part I use, it'll all be the same. So what I'm going to do simply is start off by saving to the right format. So I'm going to go File, Save As, and save a copy. And down at the bottom here where it says Type, instead of a part now, I'm going to go and save it as a stereolithography file. Okay, or an STL file, and that's the file format that the 3D printer likes. Okay, so click on that, click OK. What's going to come up is this Export STL dialog box, and under chord height, I'm going to change that to 0. And what's going to happen when I do that is Creo will automatically default it to the smallest number. When I click Apply, what you're going to see is a whole bunch of red lines show up. Now if I zoom in, you can see here how it's a nice smooth round surface. If I change this chord height to 1 and I hit Apply, you can see how now it's a jagged surface. So if you're looking for something very jagged higher up, but usually you want something smooth, so we just default it to 0. The angle control is not as important, but just default it to 1. Okay, and I hit Apply, and when I zoom out, now I'm back to that. Okay, so that's basically all I have to do. I click on OK, and I've just saved the STL file basically to the folder that I've created this in. So if I go to Soap Dish, so on my network drive, I would go back to my documents, and in this case, I'm just going to scroll through this, School Creo, scroll down to Soap Dish, oops, and you'll see my soapdish.stl, and there's my date that I just did it at the time. Okay, now that I've saved it there, I can go to my Makerware software, and I'm going to bring it in. So I can go to File, Open, or I can just go to Add. Either way, it doesn't matter. I'm going to go Add, and here's my soap dish that I did just a minute ago. Click on it, OK. Keep position, move on platform. So I'm going to put the object on the platform. Okay, you're going to see it comes in quite small. I drew that in inches and it came in millimeters. So what I need to do is scale it up. So if I click on the actual object and scale, okay, scale to 100%, uniform scaling, there's inches to millimeters. So I'm going to switch from, in this case, millimeters to inches. It comes up nice and big now. Okay, I'm just going to go up to turn, and I want to turn it so that this surface is flat. So I'm going to go -9, no, plus 90 again. There, it's flat on the surface. And I also want to now move it back to on platform. Okay, this is very important because if it's not on the platform, basically you can't build. Now, if I move this around, and I'm going to go look here, I'm going to look at the side view. And when I zoom into this, I want to make sure it is straight across so it's not up on an angle. Okay, and when I go to the front, same thing, I want to make sure it's straight across. What happens is some people will do this and they'll have it turned a tiny bit. So I'm going to go back to 0 here. I'll turn it this way. Okay, they'll have it turned here, and what you'll see is, oops, that it'll be down into the bed here and off the bed there, and that's not good because, like I say, it can't print it out properly. The other thing that you might want to look at is how you actually bring this in. Okay, so if I go back to look, okay, right now when a 3D printer builds, what's going to happen is it's going to start with the bottom, and then it's going to slowly build up layer by layer by layer as it goes across. If I was to have this turned, okay, 180 degrees, so let me just go like this, what it would do is it would build the inside, okay, and it'd be in space, right? So it wouldn't build properly. So you got to really think about how to build. Now there are solutions to that. It's called rafts and supports, but I don't want to deal with that right now. So we'll start off with getting it back to the right spot. Okay, I'm going to go to Move, just ensure that it's back on the platform. Okay, it's on the platform, and I'm going to zoom out. Okay, now, because this is full size, and I don't want it to take up that long because this is just a kind of a test, I can go back to Scaling, and under here you'll see Uniform Scaling is checked off. So that means that if I change any of these numbers, it's proportionally going to change the size. So really, I only want this thing to be, I don't know, 60 millimeters, let's say 50 millimeters. Which is approximately 2 inches. Okay, and then I just hit enter, and you'll see it'll automatically scale everything down. Okay, so now I got it scaled to the right size because this again is just a test. I can hit close, and I go to Make. So under Make, Export 4, and we have a Replicator 2. Okay, and then at the bottom here, now resolutions. There's low, which is the fastest. Okay, rafts, we're not going to use rafts. standard and high. And when I click on these different ones, okay, so high, standard, and you'll probably get a screen like this. So I'm going to click on standard, and then all this stuff comes in. So quality infill. What that is the infill, how much inside it is actually either hollow or solid. Okay, again, if you want something to go quick, you want a low infill, so like 10%. Number of shells is basically how many times it goes around the outside for structure and strength before it starts to infill. So if you want something to print out quickly, again, keep it at 2 shells. If you want something a bit more strong, you might want to put it to 4 or 5 shells, not 45. Okay, same as with infill. If you want a really strong, solid object, you might want your infill at 70%, but it's going to take a lot longer to build. So I'm going to leave the infill at 10%. I'm going to take the shell. I'm going to leave it at 3. Okay, layer height now. Now again, this is every time you put down the PLA, the plastic on the 3D printer, it's going to take 0.2 of a millimeter, which means it takes 5 passes to basically get to 1 millimeter. Okay, so again, if you're wanting a really high-end quality project, you might move this to 0.1 or 0.15, but if it's just a test for a quick prototype, leaving it at 0.2 or even 0.25 will give you a quick result. So for this tutorial and for a soap dish for the class, leave it at 10% infill, leave it at 3 shells, and leave the layer height or change layer height to 0.25. Then we click on export. Okay, and now basically it is just save it to where you want to go. So I have a thumb drive that you'll put into your computer, and you will save it to that thumb drive. And on that thumb drive, actually, it's actually the SD card that comes out of the machine, and I'll show that on a different tutorial. But that's basically how to go from Creo to Makerware to actually export. So I'll just do the quick export, and I'll just put it to my desktop right now. Okay, and I'll hit save, and you'll see down here it's going to slice. And what slicing is basically just its way of changing from the format that Makerware has to the actual 3D printer. And you see it's done, and everything's saved and done. So the next part of the tutorial will be actually using the 3D printer.